I wanted my kids to know greatest minds in history love the Lord. And I think having that purpose is what kept me writing.
Welcome to the Habit Podcast, conversations with writers about writing. I'm Jonathan Rogers, your host. Joyce McPherson has written 10 biographies as well as several middle grade novels in 45-minute increments snatched from a busy life as a mother of 9 and as a college instructor. Her most recent book is a biography of Jane Austen. In this episode, Jane McPherson and I talk about how her mother convinced her to start writing for publication when she had 2 small children. We talk about research for biographies and historical fiction, and we talk about Joyce's experiences with both traditional publishing and self-publishing. Joyce McPherson, I'm so happy to have you on the Habit Podcast. Thanks for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
You have written, 10 biographies? Is that right?
Yes, and some fiction for middle grade as well.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about biography writing.
Yeah.
No, actually, you know where I want to start? We'll get to biography writing. You were telling me before we started recording about how you really decided to go ahead and start writing. And would you tell me that story?
Yes.
Let's hear it.
Well, when I had my second child, my mom was visiting and asked me, "What do you want to do with your life?" And of course, I knew I wanted to be a mom.
Yeah.
But when my kids are grown up, I want to write books for young people. And she said, "Well, why wait till they grow up?" And I thought, well, why? So I had this idea of writing a biography of Blaise Pascal.
Mm-hmm.
It was very popular as a sermon illustration in those days. This is back in the 80s. And I thought, I'd like to know more about his life.
Yeah.
So I started researching and writing his story. And I would wake up 45 minutes before the babies and just write as much as I could and then have a regular day. And I ended up finishing a book. And it took like 2 years.
Okay.
But I sent it out, and the Sower series was popular then. And so I sent it to them and they said, "We like it, let us keep it." But they kept it for a year, didn't publish. So I said, "Let me have it back." And I sent it to Greenleaf Press with Rob Shearer. And he said, "I want to publish it." So my book was published. And I thought, yeah, I can do this. I can fit in a little bit of time. And as you know, writing, there's the original writing, but 3 times as much time for the rewriting and revising. And it's something I found I could do as a young mom. I could get those little bits of time.
Yeah. So you wrote, how many biographies did you write 45 minutes at a time?
Pretty much all of them.
Wow. Okay. So that's your process is 45 minutes at a time. You're not setting aside a whole day. I mean, obviously not. You got 9 kids?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what I discovered as the kids got older, it shrunk. It might be half an hour.
Wow.
But I would set the timer and tell the kids, don't bother me unless there's blood. And then I would write. So I have a lot of friends who are writers who over the years we've talked about this, and you can write a little at a time. And in between, you're kind of thinking and planning. So when you sit down, you're just ready to go. And so I do want to encourage people who are very busy that they can put aside a little bit of time to get something started. And so anyway, I did keep writing. Rob Shearer asked me to write on Isaac Newton and then on Albert Dürer. And then I wrote on John Calvin and William Tyndale. Yeah. And this is the 500th year of the English translation of the Bible from Tyndale, which is kind of fun. But those books were written really because I wanted my kids to know that some of the greatest minds in history love the Lord. And I think having that purpose is what kept me writing, knowing that I wanted my kids and my Sunday school students and other kids just to know.
Yeah.
So that's what got me started.
Yeah. Okay. I've got 2 quick biography questions.
Yes.
Or specific, I guess I say biographical questions about 2 of your subjects. One is, you said Blaise Pascal was popular as a sermon illustration in the 80s.
Yes.
Which story are you talking about? There was a common...
Well, there was God-shaped vacuum was an example that was a very common allusion to Blaise Pascal. And then he had this kind of like C.S. Lewis's trilemma, but it was that it made more sense to bet, if you were a betting man, that God existed because you had infinite gain, than bet that he didn't because you had everything to lose.
Yeah.
So,
Pascal's wager.
yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Very, very common in sermon illustrations.
Yeah. I remember now. It took me a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. And then on Isaac Watts, is it true that he had a woman that he sort of wrote letters to and that he kind of fell in love with via letter, and then when she saw him, he was too ugly for her?
Well, that I did Isaac Newton, not Isaac Watts.
Oh, that's right.
So sorry, I don't know that question.
That's embarrassing. You did say Isaac Newton. I thought you said Isaac Watts.
Oh, well, yes, but
okay.
Newton is a fun subject, and his hobby on Sundays was to try to figure out how to put the Bible's chronology into world chronology. And it was just his hobby, but on the Sabbath, this is what I'm going to pursue. So he was just a curious person and fun to research. Yeah.
All right. Well, talk to me about, so there's my biographical questions, but one of which completely misfired. And then, but let's also, I want to talk about biography writing as a discipline. And well, I'm just going to start with, what do you love about it?
Well, I love it that the plot is provided.
Okay. Yeah.
Really not a very strong person on plot. So when you research somebody's biography, you're finding out what happened to them. And in a sense, the plot is written for you. And you have this ability to highlight the things that are important to your message. So, for example, I wanted my children to know that these great minds love the Lord. And so my biographies are really spiritual biographies, starting with when they're young. Any information I can get about like their church attendance or the books they read or incidents in their lives. A lot of them would write about something in their life that changed their life. And an example is I did a recent biography on George MacDonald, who grew up in a church in a loving, godly family, but felt that he really didn't come to Christ till he was in college. He writes about that. And at the same time, he perceived a calling to ministry. So I think it's interesting for kids to see how you can even go along, going to Sunday school, even helping to teach Sunday school, and then have a spiritual experience that really distills where you're going. So anyway, so I enjoy doing the research, having the plot provided for me, and then being able to highlight, for, in my case, the spiritual story.
Yeah. One thing that about biographies I've noticed is that the protagonist almost always dies at the end. Have you noticed that?
It's so sad. Yes.
Yeah. I wrote a biography of Flannery O'Connor, and I get so sad every time I think about the fact that she died at the end.
I know. It is so sad.
Yeah. But you know what? In autobiographies, the protagonist almost always survives.
Yes, because they wrote it themselves. Just very nice. Very hopeful.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I have. So you say the plot is provided, but also, so that limitation is limitation is always a good thing for a writer, right? It's always a help. On the other hand, it's very common for that plot not to be a super pleasing shape. In sort of Aristotle's terms, for instance, there's not always that nice shape that we're looking for in a story. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yes, it really is a different genre. And I grew up reading biographies written for children, and I love them. I don't know why, but I just would go to the biography section and pick one book after another. And I think there's a little story within each period of their life that might have a narrative arc. So I think that's interesting. It's also interesting to see the narrative arc of history. So sometimes when I'm writing, I'm looking for those little unknown facts about what did they write with, or what was the Book of Common Prayer like in Jane Austen's time?
Yeah.
Which that was a fun rabbit trail to go down.
Yeah.
But I think there can be a story within a story.
Mm-hmm.
And so in some ways, I look at my chapters as being each of them a little arc.
Yeah.
And I think that helps. And for my friends who are writing historical fiction, we've talked about this as well. You're often doing stories within stories because you are tied to what happened in history.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I always, when I think about historical fiction and talk about historical fiction, which still feels different from biography in these terms, I feel like what's always interesting about in historical fiction is what is a subjective experience of the people who are experiencing these objective facts, right? You don't get to change the objective facts, but the reason we read historical fiction is not so much to learn the objective facts, although they certainly can be educational, but rather what was it like to experience those facts.
Yeah.
And I wonder is biography different? Do you think biography is that as true for biography as it is for historical fiction?
Well, the type of biography that I wrote for Greenleaf Press and is typical of the children's biographies of the 1980s and 90s, you are inside the protagonist's mind. So they are reacting to the events that we have documented in their lives or the history. They're reacting to both. So you do get that subjective insight. And partly it's because the reader, the child reader, is identifying with the protagonist. So you're writing from that point of view. And part of Greenleaf Press's idea was to have twaddle-free history where you would learn history through the people who lived rather than memorizing dates.
Yeah.
And so I think the children's biography genre may even be a little special subsection of biography. I've noticed for adult biographies, and I do read a lot that are written for adults to read, they often seem a little bit more like an encyclopedia. Like they're documenting all the facts that can be known. But when you write for children, you're actually getting inside the mind of the person.
Yeah.
So it is a little different. And in some ways, I would say it is almost historical fiction because we can't really know what Blaise Pascal thought when he was 12.
Sure.
We just have, it's interesting in his case, his older sister wrote his biography. And so she was there in his childhood. So it's fun to have some, just child prodigy kind of stories, from her point of view. But I do think children's biography is a little bit different.
Okay, your most recent book was on Jane Austen.
Yes.
What did you learn about Jane Austen that surprised you?
Wow. Well, I have loved Jane Austen's writing since I was 12.
Yeah.
But what surprised me was her spirituality, because when you read her book, she's kind of laughing as she's writing, and you have a kind of a persona that cares about even her people who are foolish.
Yeah.
But I hadn't realized what was behind it was her spirituality. And so when I started reading, I had access to her and to her prayers and some wonderful scholarship that has gone on. And I discovered that she was writing in the context with the scaffolding of the Christian faith. And so I totally enjoyed learning about what her childhood was like. Her father was the rector of their parish, and she had a remarkable family. She actually wrote to read to them. And I thought it was fascinating that she already had a built-in audience for her clever wit. And which actually I think is a great tip to writers to think, do you have an audience that you're writing for who will appreciate what you're writing, whether it's funny or historical or whatever.
But I love that idea of writing not just to an audience in the abstract, but to actual people.
Yes.
And that she was writing to amuse and entertain some specific people whose sense of humor she knew very well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I know, speaking of sort of a real life audience, you have a pretty active writers group where you live in Chattanooga.
Yes.
And tell me about that. I mean, the what that has meant to, that's an audience that not exactly your target audience, and yet they're people that you are writing for, I should think, in
Yeah.
one sense.
Yes. Well, I highly recommend for writers to have groups that will come around and encourage them. And this group was started because of our leader, Barry Smith, going to a conference and being given the advice, have a local group.
Mm-hmm.
And we read Bandersnatch to start with and talked
Yeah.
about what it meant to be a group. And then we started meeting once a month, which is very reasonable. I find that all of us are over scheduled, but this seemed
Yeah.
to fit for our group. And then we have some standards that one of our early leaders put into place where we are there for the purpose of encouraging the author and helping the manuscript to grow. But
Mm-hmm.
it means that we don't have extremely cutting kind of feedback. And I think it's a safe place
Yeah.
for writers. There's all kinds of groups, and sometimes in MFA programs, you will get a group that is extremely perfectionistic or
Mm-hmm.
critical. So,
Yeah.
um, so anyway, we have had a wonderful time, and it's been going, I think, for 4 years now. But
Yeah.
we've books published from the group, and it's been wonderful.
Yeah. That's great. I always love hearing about what's happening in the local, in local groups.
Yeah,
Of course,
yeah,
I run the Habit membership, which I know has been very helpful to many writers. In one sense, I wish the Habit membership weren't necessary. I wish everybody just had their local groups that they could be
yes.
their people. But of course, that's just not the
Well,
way
I'm
most people
also
treat.
I'm also an active member at the Habit, and I love the writing, virtual writing groups that
Yeah,
are on the Habit.
yeah,
And we have gotten to know each other. And so when we share our plans for that 45 minutes we're going to write side by side, we're really egging each other on. And
hmm
it's wonderful. So I highly recommend it. And most writers are a little introverted.
hmm
It's lovely that you can just put on your Zoom and see your friends, and then we turn off our cameras and we write for 45 minutes.
yeah, yeah.
It's been wonderful. So
Good.
yeah,
Yeah, good. I'm glad. I'm glad it's been good to you. It's. I think the kind of your writing group in Chattanooga and what we do in the Habit. I feel like these are writers who understand that the real value and what we can bring to each other is allyship.
yes,
Not competition, not establishing hierarchies or pecking orders, but saying, I've got this little plot of ground that's mine to tend and nurture, and you've got your plot, and nothing about you making your plot beautiful takes anything away from the beauty of my plot.
yes,
And in fact, it makes the whole thing better.
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful attitude for people to come together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a barrier for some writers who are used to it. I mean, you said, I know not all MFA programs are like this, but it feels, just from anecdotally, it feels like that's the model, is we're putting people in competition with one another to kind of see who's the best. And that's just from academic settings. That's what we're used to for how we think about what we're doing when we write or share. We're demonstrating who's on the top of the heap and who's lower down on the
Yeah.
heap. But once you get past that, really good things start to happen.
Yes, it really does. And I'm also a composition professor at
Mm-hmm.
Covenant College. And what I've discovered is people feel insecure about their writing. And if
Yeah.
they can feel safe, they can grow. But
Mm-hmm.
if they come in afraid to share, and it really does take a big step, then it really stymies that growth. So,
Yeah. I'm just curious, as a teacher of composition, and you're saying you're trying to make people feel secure, comfortable, but you still have to give grades, and some people get bad grades, which feels like, well, it doesn't feel good.
no,
How do you
not true.
how do you manage that?
Well, I give my students the opportunity to rewrite so they can get a
Mm-hmm.
better grade.
Uh-huh.
I like them to feel in control, and also to know that writing is never done. You can always revise.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my goal for my students is for them to learn through revision.
Yeah.
And for some of them, it's like, what? I spent 2 hours writing the first draft. And it's like, yes, now you can spend 2 hours totally rewriting it.
That's right. That is a hard thing to learn. I used to tell students it's quicker to write 3 drafts than to write one. If you're willing to write a bad first draft and revise it instead of trying to get it all done in one draft.
So true.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry, I feel like we're kind of all over the place, but we got a lot of things to talk about. I want to talk about you have both done traditional publishing with Greenleaf Press and also self-publishing. And sounds like you've had a good experience with both. How did you make the shift, and what made you,
Yeah.
what do you find to be the advantages of self-publishing as regard? I mean, obviously there's advantages to both. And one question, you don't have to answer this immediately, but when you were talking about the fact that you're never done writing
Yes.
and revising, when you have a traditional publishing, you have an editor, you're done eventually because the editor says, here's the deadline, you got to do it. When you're self-publishing, I'm always interested to know how people know when they're done in self-publishing.
Ooh, that's a really good question. Wow. Okay. Well, the first question, I published with Greenleaf Press and had a very good experience. And Greenleaf Press at the time was kind of the gold standard for teaching history in homeschool.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just wonderful to get to contribute to the literature for their company. And then I wrote a biography of C.S. Lewis. And Rob Shearer, who is Greenleaf Press, said, I think he's overexposed. I don't think we need another biography. So I thought, well, I will self-publish. And even the technology of self-publishing had come about through Amazon, KDP. It's free.
Yeah. So what year was that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm guessing around 2004, but I'm getting so old, I can't remember these things. So anyway, I published it with Amazon, and I had a very good experience. It was fun to be able to control all the, every bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
I do have editors. I recommend everyone to have good editors. And then I wrote a book on Johann Sebastian Bach, and I thought, I'm just going to go ahead. I didn't even ask Rob. I just went ahead, and so I started self-publishing my subsequent.
Okay, there's the question. When you wrote Bach, what made you say, you know what, I'm not even, because Bach's not overexposed the way Lewis is.
Right. Yes.
So what made you say, I think I'll just do this myself?
I have no idea. I think I just got a wild hair. Sometimes, you just want to try something. And I have found a lot of writers are really adventurous.
Yeah.
So, you just say, I want to see if this happens. And I will say the traditional publishing cycle is much longer. So you might get it delivered to your editor and it might come out 2 years later. So being my personality, I just wanted it out there for my kids and my Sunday school kids. And yeah. Just
okay.
So,
all right. So now tell me answer my question about when you don't have an editor or a publisher saying you've got a deadline, you got to do this. And when you've hired your editor, right? When you hire your editor, that person can't make you do anything. How do you manage this? How do you know when you're done?
Well, I do think my beta readers help a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They are members of my writing group who have time. And so
that's a big qualifier, isn't it?
Big qualifier. So once it's in reasonable shape, I'll take it to them and actually do keep revising. So it takes a lot of time. I would say 3 times as long as the original drafting for the revising, beta readers, going back. It is a long, long process. And I think what keeps me going is thinking about the kids I'm writing for. And I do find that an advantage with self-publishing is it's going to get to those kids because at some point you're going to publish it. But I have a lot of young people in my life. I've worked with a Shakespeare troupe for 23 years, and we've grown
Really?
to 90 members. So my group of beta readers, and I have a lot of kids I'm writing for. So anyway, I love self-publishing for the good turnaround.
Yeah.
If it
Okay.
takes me a year,
Uh-huh.
to revise and revise and revise.
Yeah. Yeah. At this point in your, so are you still writing in 45-minute increments?
I can actually have the luxury now of going for 4 hours.
Uh-huh.
So I often will do 4 hours, but I find you need to break it up. Like maybe after 45 minutes, you need to get up and walk around. So
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
my process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Do you, so you're still, so a 4-hour block is just 45-minute blocks for you, it sounds like.
Right. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And
You learn to write in those increments. That's what you still do, even if you got more time.
yeah, yes. Yeah.
Um, are you as focused as you used to be with your 45 minutes?
Well, no, I'm still doing some of the processing. Like before, I was processing between 45-minute blocks.
Yeah.
Now I'm actually doing the processing there. So
Yeah.
yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
does feel slower in that
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I do find writing is actually really healthy habit. So even on days when I'm not necessarily making good forward progress on whatever the project is, I do try to spend some time writing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Good.
yeah, so not every,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Well, that's I completely agree that it's good for you to write every day, even when you are not, you know, doesn't feel like you're moving the ball forward, or even when you don't have a big project afoot. I just don't take my own advice on that.
yes,
Joyce, I'd love to hear some of your insights, some of the things you've learned about research in the last 20 or whatever. It's more than 20 years you've been doing this. Way more than 20 years you've been doing this.
yeah,
So yeah, what have you learned? How do you know? I mean, one question I always have: research is so fun, but eventually you have to start writing. You have to stop researching and start writing. So I'd love to hear your insights on some things you've learned about doing research, but then I also want to hear about how do you stop doing research and actually write?
yes. That is really the problem. I love the research part, and I could go forever on the research.
Yeah.
So when I first started, I was going to libraries to find the documents I needed.
Mm-hmm.
But now when people write, we have like archive.org is a wonderful source of primary or early published books that you might not be able to get through interlibrary loan. So things have changed totally since those days. In fact, when I was researching Calvin, I traveled to Paris and Geneva to look at the places where he lived. But now I can go online and see pictures of where he lived or what's left of the wall that he
Yeah.
escaped the window through. So I things have really changed for people who are doing historical research. And I recommend seeing what you can do online. That really
Mm-hmm.
saves you a lot of time. You can find images. I've used Google Maps and gone to the street view and walked the streets where, like, I'm doing Johannes Kepler now,
Mm-hmm.
where he lived, and just getting an idea of what does that community look like. And of course, it's now, but a lot of these historical buildings are still there.
Yeah.
And I also really enjoy learning about the books they read. So, for example, when I was studying Jane Austen, I was able to find the Book of Common Prayer that was published at the time that her father was using it for family devotions.
Uh-huh.
I could know which scripture passage they would be reading for their night devotions in the summer. It was just so fun. So, a lot of these
Yeah.
things are available. And I really I like having images of places. That was one thing that was a game changer for me, is just searching for pictures of certain historical places that are important to the story. So I just wanted to share for people who are writing historical type uh, novels or biographies that they have a lot of resources right at their fingertips.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then, of course, it's good to know some good librarians who can do interlibrary loans for you.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah.
Well, okay. So here's a question. You've described a very efficient way of getting the information you need to write historical or biographical information. Um, when I was sort of doing more research, it was pre Google, and one of the things I loved about it was the inefficiency, right? The fact that you don't always know what you're looking for. Like when you know what you're looking for, you can get right to it with the internet. I learned so much from wandering around trying to find what I was looking for. And you started writing biography in that era, and you are now writing in an era where everything's right at your fingertips. I'd love to hear you talk about the difference.
Yes. And it's still fun to go and do it the inefficient way. So a scholar helped me figure out how to get a library card to the Bodleian in Oxford.
Yeah,
Got to go and see C.S. Lewis's handwriting
yeah.
on like an outline for an essay he was going to write. And oh my, it was so fun. So I will say this is part of the fun of writing is saying, well, I have to go to Oxford.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I remember, going to the library at Vanderbilt and having to go through those the microfilm things
Yeah.
that you'd roll. The thing you're looking for is the 15th thing on the reel, and the only way you can get there is by reeling all the way through to number 15. And I'd be spinning the wheel, seeing where I landed. And I'd be in the middle of item 6, and it'd be a cookbook from the 16th century, and so I'd find myself reading a little bit about the cookbook, and then I'd hit it again, and now I'm on item 12, and it's, I don't know, a manual for midwifery or what. I mean, there's so much of what I learned was from reeling through those microfilms, and it was so incredibly inefficient. Sometimes I would then get to what I was looking for and realize I didn't need it at all. Like it wasn't helpful at all, and yet I learned 3 things I didn't even know I was interested in the meantime. Again, super inefficient, and did not lend itself to my finishing my dissertation any more quickly. But it sure was fun.
It is fun. I highly endorse it. And I will say for people who are, well, I will just say for moms who most of the work that you're doing only lasts as long as a meal is consumed or the laundry is clean. It is wonderful to have a project where you are making something that lasts longer.
Yeah.
So doing this kind of research, this inefficient research even, is so rewarding. And I think it's an encouragement for those who have that calling or that interest.
Yeah.
To let yourself have a project like that.
Yeah. I'm really grateful for your mother saying to you, go ahead and do this. Even though you have 7 more kids coming. I guess you didn't have a way of knowing that at the time.
I did
not. but do this now instead of waiting. And you modeled for those children that this kind of thing is important. And it's important for men, and it's important for women, and that your whole life wasn't consumed with, I'm just here to make sure that you have clothes and clean clothes and food on the table. That, of course, that was part of your calling, taking care of those kids, but it wasn't your whole calling.
Yeah. Yes. And we all have many callings. So we want to use our gifts for God's glory.
Yeah. All right, Joyce, let's wrap up with the question I always end with, and that is, who are the writers who make you want to write?
Well, C.S. Lewis and Jane Austen are 2 of my top. They have inspired me not only by their writing, but by their life stories. And and I have to add George MacDonald as well. And my second to last book was George MacDonald, but reading his historical fiction was like a devotion for me. So I continue to recommend him to people who he's kind of lost sight of in this generation. But
I didn't know that he wrote historical fiction.
Yes, he's famous for his fantasy, but children's fairy tales. But he wrote historical fiction that, as G.K. Chesterton said, is almost like a fairy tale, but in a historical setting. And they're They're so good.
I need to dig that up. I'm not a McDonald expert by any stretch of the imagination, and you've inspired me to go find out more. All right, Joyce, thank you so much for being here. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you very much. It was great to chat.
The Habit Podcast is brought to you by The Rabbit Room, where art nourishes community and community nourishes art. You can support their work, including this podcast, by becoming a member. Visit rabbitroom.com/membership. Special thanks as well to Taylor Leonard for letting us use her song Diamonds as the theme music for the Habit Podcast. You can learn more about Taylor and follow her work at taylorleonard.com. The Habit membership is a library of resources for writers by me, Jonathan Rogers. More importantly, The Habit is a hub of community where like-minded writers gather to discuss their work and give each other a little more courage. Find out more at thehabit.co.